Okay. Oh, and it's gonna be live streamed. So that's the digestive system.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's the I don't. Yeah. Okay. Then macromolecules. I just thought this is awesome, so it had to make it.
Oh, this is cool, man.
So
I thought it was awesome, and I thought, it should make it. Okay. Food groups. They're not in order. It was just me. Yeah. Then calories, because that 479 thing people don't know. Then me and believing that things should go back to standard 6. This drawing. Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Then micronutrients. And then how to understand food labels. I don't know how good are we here yet in Kenya? Are we
not all foods?
Like, is your Elliot Mkate having? Barely. Oh, it doesn't have. Okay, for the benefit of. Does it have?
Sorry, I'm saying even when
labels?
Zico, like we have, I don't know if Elliot's, I mean, bread has, it probably does. What I do know is that like a number of packaged foods do have them, but the understanding, like that one serving, for instance, with Vitamix is just like the one piece.
Yeah.
As opposed to, but you give me the whole pack. So,
okay.
So, even when about food labels and measuring and stuff like that, very, very few of my clients are there, or the people I've encountered so far. It's just mostly, so what portion are we looking at? So we usually use the plating method, like your plate should be mostly vegetables, should be more of this, more of that.
Okay, I don't have the plate. If you have the plate, because I don't like the plate because it's very, have you seen American plates?
That's the other thing, yeah.
So that's why I don't like the plate. Okay, let me see. Just more of the nutrition label. And because everybody and their mother believes you can only get potassium from a banana, this had to make it. Hiyo lazima tuongee because people tutafika tu hapo. So
yeah. Oh, I know, because
let's give it because it's gonna be live streamed on Facebook. So the watu watachelewa wata join pande wote wanachelewanga, they'll join pande hiyo. Sawa, are you guys ready? We start.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, Sharon can kick off.
Okay. I have to do my spiel, at least mabibi na mabwana one. Okay. Good morning, the people from Minnesota, and good morning, the people from Kenya. Today we are gonna tackle nutrition, and our panelists today are, I'm just pointing the way they are on my screen, Sharon and Hussein. Sharon is Sharon, you're the host now. Wow. Okay, Sharon is a nutritionist, and Hussein is actually a pediatrician in Kenya. And when I say who's, it's just him, because of course it's his who's. And my name is Posa. I'm the what have I called, the moderator. So let's start things off. And Sharon, if you need me to pull anything you've seen on my slides, just tell me so that I pull it back. Okay. So let's start with what exactly is nutrition, and can we use the word interchangeably with the word food? What is nutrition, and is food nutrition, or there's something missing there in the description? Sharon, that's you.
Nutrition is basically the intake of food. It basically describes like the intake of food in relation to the body's dietary needs. So we need food to function, and we need food for optimal health. So nutrition is basically the focus on that intake. And then the food itself is the substances that have the nutrients that we need for survival, for energy, for good health, to resist infections, etc.
Okay. Hussein, do you want to add on to that description?
No, that's the best way to describe it, I think. Very simple, very effective.
Okay. And so exactly what do we eat? And we can, if for the panelists, that's just the macro and micro, and I can put up the slide. What, yeah, let's discuss food groups so that people can understand, because everyone is like, I'm not on carbs, I'm off carbs. Like it's the, I feel like it's the only nutrient people wing out there, but they don't really know what they're eating. What exactly are the foods and what food groups are there? And I'll share the slides so that we can use them for the discussion.
Okay. So I mean the major food groups would have to be carbohydrates and protein, and then we have minerals and vitamins. But then, you know, minerals and vitamins will cover a host of other things, and then we have fats. So the others that are not really classed as nutrients, but that are important. And thanks for bringing this up, because there's macronutrients and then there's micronutrients. And the ones that we need in large amounts, macro. So those are the carbohydrates, the proteins and fats, which are indicated here. And then the micronutrients are the ones that we need in smaller amounts, meaning if you ate the same amount of food, you would eat a lot more, say, for instance, of a carbohydrate. If it's a potato, you'd get a lot of carbohydrates from that, but then you'd get, you would need a very small amount to get the micronutrients, which are the minerals and vitamins. So macros are basically the ones you need in large amounts. Micros are the ones that you need in small amounts. And they appear, now there's a general assumption that, you know, foods are classed as, if it is a carbohydrate, or if it is a potato, if it is rice, that it just has carbohydrates at the end. You know, that leafy greens only have minerals, maybe some vitamins, and that's a common misconception. That protein, you know, if it's meat or if it's your soy or your tofu, that just has protein and nothing else. And yet there are other nutrients in there. So that's just basically to class them. So it's food. When you break it down into macro and micronutrients, for the macros, we have the protein, the carbohydrates, and the fats. And then we have the micronutrients, which are the minerals and vitamins.
And just to reiterate your point on people thinking one item has everything. If you look at the banana, which I'm going to use it for something else, it has protein, it has a bit of protein, it has fat, but the major macronutrient, it has carbohydrates. Then it has all those slew of vitamins and all those, the others of minerals. So it has, it's not the best example, okay, it's a good example of having everything. But depending on your needs, you may or may not need to eat bananas. Hussein, do you want to add onto the macro and the micronutrients discussion?
No, all I would say is that I think we sometimes tend to focus so much on the macronutrients that the micronutrients, especially for children, I mean, you'll hear the term hidden hunger. That's something that children lack almost every single time as they get older. So that's something, for me, that's of personal interest, the micronutrients. Macro, unfortunately, we are now having a generation of children that are overnourished rather than undernourished. So which is why my focus is actually on the micronutrients usually.
Okay. So let's digest this food first. Then we can look at the problems that come with under and over nutrition. And you're saying this is you because you went ahead and did physiology for a year, right? So just take us through the journey of digestion, and I can I'll put up the digestive system for you.
Right. I think the usual assumption is that digestion begins only in the intestines going downwards. That's actually not the most accurate. If you look at the mouth first, that's where everything begins. So once you start to get food in the mouth and you chew, you break it into smaller bits, saliva mixes, and you already start breaking down a lot of things in the saliva. As you go further down, as you begin to chew, I don't know how scientific I should get, Posa. Should I leave it simple or
Simple,
scientific? Which one?
simple.
Simple.
You can say this the scientific term and then simplify it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if you look at the salivary enzymes, I mean, I don't go into that much detail, but that's where the breakdown of most of the carbohydrates begins. As you break that down, you swallow the food, it enters your stomach. That's where now your two enzymes, renin and pepsin, take over. So pepsin and renin break down most of your proteins into smaller molecules. If you've taken milk, milk has to be curdled there, so it'll become like yogurt as you take that. And as you feed, the brain is always sensing that something is going down. So it now starts preparing the small intestines to receive the food. If you notice just after the stomach, when you get into the first part of the small intestine, the duodenum, that's where a lot of now the digestion takes place in terms of breaking down the large fatty acids. So all the complex carbohydrates, the complex fats are broken down at that point. Complex proteins made into smaller molecules, your amino acids, everything is broken down from proteins into smaller molecules. The small intestine technically works as the factory of everything, aided by the liver as well. So if you notice that where the liver sits, if you look at the bile duct, and I don't know if that will enlarge, it might be clear on a larger slide, I guess.
Ask and you shall receive.
Okay, thank you. So if you look at that, I won't go into the detailed anatomy of the liver, but if you see the gallbladder and the bile duct, it's feeding right at a point where it's entering into the intestines, just above the duodenum. At the same time, the pancreas are releasing all the enzymes at that point. So the pancreas, consider the pancreas as, for example, if you are living without your pancreas, you will be unable to digest most of your proteins, most of your fats and carbohydrates. You'll probably not be able to digest a lot of stuff. You need a lot of artificial enzymes because those are responsible for everything. I'm going to keep it simple because if I get into that detailed physiology, it's going to confuse a lot of people. But if you look at that, between the liver, the pancreas, and the duodenum, those three areas, if any of those three organs was to malfunction, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and probably your vitamins would not be digested at this point, which means both a loss of your macronutrients because you can't take your proteins, carbohydrates, and your fats, which are the major groups. And then the liver is responsible for now dealing with all the other tiny, tiny minerals and such. So if any of those three goes wrong, the lower you go down the intestine, the job of the rest of the intestine is just to absorb everything that's broken down. So as you go down, you'll notice that small intestine has a very, very many curves and loops. So that's basically increased its surface area for absorption of all the minerals and vitamins that you take. As you go further down and you enter the large intestines, from that junction, where you see that the large and small intestines meet, that ileocecal junction, as you go into the large intestines, your large intestines now will absorb the water and the rest of the minerals. So especially things like the micronutrients, the calcium, magnesium, zinc, those more or less will be, and water as well, will be absorbed by the large intestine. Anything that doesn't go down is eventually going to end up in the rectum and go out as waste. The problem begins when we assume that everything starts off in the intestine. That's where we make a mistake. It actually begins in the mouth. Chewing that food is essential. I mean, if you don't chew your food and you take it down whole, you just gulp it down half the time, you have big pieces of food, which means you've reduced the surface area of your food. Smaller pieces have a larger surface area, which means if they enter the intestines, you're going to have more areas for enzymes to work, which means you digest food better. And that's the reason why chewing becomes an essential part of eating. Take your time, eat slowly. Do not be in a hurry to eat your food. I'm just going to leave it there because I'm going to keep it very simple, because I won't go into all the physiology behind it.
Okay. Sharon, do you have anything to add on to that? Hussein went and did physiology, so yeah.
I could get details, Sharon, but I'm intentionally not doing it.
Okay.
So good. No, good job there. It's just the emphasis on chewing your food is really important. And I can't stress it enough. There are times when I will literally tell people to watch what's going in and then watch what's going out, to chew your food until it feels like a pulp in your mouth. And then also, if, you know, and I know this sounds a bit gross for many people, but when you go for a bowel movement and you know, you're cleaning up and you're seeing what's happening there, if you're seeing whole chunks of food, whole chunks of maize and beans and stuff like that, then you know you're definitely not chewing your food properly. And you know, that will also come with issues like you'll get gassy and, you know, you'll be a bit bloated. So those are some of the things you can look out for to make sure that you are chewing your food properly, and if you need to improve on the same. And also just eating in a relaxed environment and setting aside time for eating. Many of us treat eating like it's a sort of luxury. You know, like I'll be having my lunch while doing something else, as if I were wasting time on eating. So just putting aside time to eat, and doing just that, you know, spacing our meals, etc. We'll get back into that a little later, but just taking the time to eat your food and to eat it properly, and ensuring that your plate is properly balanced.
And so where does this leave the non-chewed food, the beverages, soup, and of course this is smoothies and porridge?
Oh, with regard to like
yeah, as in you've emphasized on chewing and all that stuff. So where does this leave the things that you don't chew?
all that you don't typically chew.
Yeah.
I advise people to take that, like in most, say if it's restaurants or when you're serving a meal that is more than one course, we usually have fruit taken first because it passes pretty quickly. Like, I mean, it's digested pretty quickly. It's pretty simple. And yes, it is rich in fiber. But so for instance, well, let's not go to fruit. Let's go to smoothies and soups and the likes. Smoothies, for instance, the food is mechanically broken down. You know, like if you're blending something, if you're juicing it, juicing takes away a lot of the fiber that's in there. But then blending also breaks it down mechanically, because I like to think of fiber as a mesh. And so it's this mesh that allows us to, when we have eaten our food, for what has been broken down, a lot of it being, we talked about foods being digested to the simplest units. So if it's protein, it's broken down to amino acids, etc. So when you consume, say, a smoothie that has a fruit and maybe you added a bit of a nut butter in there, when you're consuming it, it will basically be digested or broken down very quickly. Because, you know, digestion is not just the mechanical breakdown, it's also the chemical breakdown, yes, but the mechanical breakdown has already taken place. So smoothies will pass very quickly, juices will also pass very quickly. And that is also be a point to note on with regard to calories, because I feel like I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but so for soups and juices and the likes, if we can have them before our meals, the better. Then that way we can have our meals after, because they tend to pass. Now there's the stomach, I have read, and Hussein will correct me if I'm wrong, has a set way of digesting, you know, like we'll start with carbohydrates will start to be digested in the mouth, and then protein is what will be broken down in the stomach. And so if you're taking water, it will usually pass, and then vegetables will be digested, will be broken down next. And then eventually what will take the longest time will usually be after the protein will be fat. And so it would be the soups and the others can be taken, yes, of course, not replacing meals. And that's another thing we need to note. Many people think that if I am taking a smoothie or if I'm juicing, if I'm detoxing, I don't necessarily need to eat food. We are not able to juice everything. And especially if you're eating anything raw, and this goes out to people who take green smoothies, there are certain nutrients that are available for absorption better when, say, vegetables are cooked as opposed to when they're raw. And then there are others that are more easily available, we call it bioavailability, available for absorption when these foods are raw. But then we also have to think of anti-nutrient factors, if it's oxalates and phytates, and these are some of the substances that are available in that are present in food substances or in foods that when we cook them, say if we boil them or if we soak them and they're broken down, or a number of them are basically gotten rid of so that we're able to digest our food. So we have to think of the anti-nutrient factors, and we also have to think of what else we are eating. You know, it's not just about doing smoothies and juices and just focusing on that. It's the meal needs to be balanced, and any diet that calls for you to do away with a whole food group is definitely not something that you should be thinking of doing long term.
Hussein, do you want to add anything to what Sharon has said?
No, I think she sums it up pretty clearly. There's right now a large trend towards smoothies, especially. I have my personal reasons why I go against half those smoothie things, but she's explained it quite simply. It's the anti-nutrients we are worried about. Everybody assumes just because I mixed kale, bananas, mangoes, peanuts, everything in one's milk, I have a full diet, I've received a full nutritional benefits from the smoothie. That's actually entirely wrong in terms of nutritional intake. You have probably lost quite a bit of your diet from that. So it's exactly what she said. It's all about the bioavailability, not about the quantity, not about what you take. It's the bioavailability at the end of the day.
Okay. And so what's the ideal, like for a normal physiological man, because whether it's a man, even if the feminist here, you have to bear with me, but the normal physiological person is a man. What are we meant to eat? And you can talk about calories per gram of everything as you just, and Sharon, you can throw in your plate as we go through this. And I'll share the screen to just show you the slide for calories per gram of everything we take. And I know the three of us are teetotalers, so we need to take care of the people who take alcohol too in this discussion. So what's the ideal plate for the ideal man look like? And these are the calories per macro, because the micronutrients don't have calories per se. And you can break down what I don't know. Okay, just go ahead. Who wants to start?
Sharon, okay, go ahead.
Oh, Sharon, go ahead. Okay.
Because I don't agree with this thing, so you go ahead.
And that's the thing. I was hesitant because I typically have found that to make healthy eating practical, or the management of conditions practical, I have to come to where people are. So fine, in school you're taught that this is how you should break down calories to someone. But when you're talking to, you know, a client or someone who's been newly diagnosed with a condition, it makes more sense when you're saying things like, look at the size of your palm, and that should be how much protein you're taking. For an adult, look at the size of your fist, that should be how many carbs you're taking. And then, you know, if you're using butter or margarine or peanut butter, so about the size of your thumb or just 1 tablespoon, and depending on how much food you're preparing. And that's more accessible to people. So what I usually tell people is, when you have your plate, and I know the plating method has its challenges because it depends on the sizes of plates that you have wherever you are. But typically about half of your plate, or almost half of your plate, should have vegetables. And when I say vegetables, I like to emphasize that we're talking mostly leafy greens. And then the other quarter should have protein. Yes, thank you. So we are talking leafy greens, and then the other quarter should have protein. So here, protein, we're thinking of legumes, and we are also thinking of your meats and your fish and your chicken. And then the last quarter would be your carbohydrates. So if that's your ugali or chapati or potatoes or pasta. And then there also should be a portion of fruit in there. So that's a method that basically is more practical for me to use, as opposed to say giving them like specific, like whenever I have tried telling people to measure out if it's grams or anything, or measure out how much food they're eating with a cup, or I mean, it barely goes anywhere.
Okay, but this is just me wondering if it's okay for people to just have an idea of what they're eating. They might not, because this is for people who are more knowledgeable and people in the bodybuilding industry. They need to know this. But I'm just wondering, because we've dumbed down education too much. What's wrong with telling people that 1 gram of protein has 4 calories? I'm just wondering from, yeah, from the two of you.
There's probably no harm in telling people that, but unfortunately what's happening now is everybody's focus becomes on how many calories am I ingesting. So they'll go back and look at any chart from whichever, get it. I guess Dr. Google is more common these days. And somebody will tell you, Dr. Google said for my age and my weight, I should be ingesting 2,000 calories per day. So then they focus on cutting down everything to 2,000 calories. But the question is, where did they get those calories from? If they took, say, for example, they know that, say, for example, a gram of meat, any meat, red meat, say, for example, has, let's say, 100 calories. They may have taken 10 portions of that and 1 portion of fruit. And then they tell you, I've had my 2,000 calories for the day. So that's the reason why the whole idea behind calories has been abused and misplaced. It has a role sometimes when you're, say, for example, for people from hospital who are convalescing and you need to get them back on their feet. But overall, it's been abused for way too long. And that's the reason why I don't think I agree with the calories part of it.
So is this a better, it's not the best, this is what I pulled up from Dr. Google just now, but is this like what you teach basically, Sharon? And yeah, Sharon, this is what you use to teach your clients?
Yes, this is typically what I'd use to teach my clients. And I found that it seems to be more effective in helping them get to their health and wellness goals. Because as Hussein has said, it is a real challenge. I mean, people look up everything on the internet. And the minute you start mentioning calories, so for instance, very many of my client consultations will usually start when I ask the question. So paint a picture for me of how your eating has been, or what your general eating habits are like, etc. There's very many people, and I'm saying about 95 and above percent of people will start with, I don't really take carbs. Because there's a way in which we have just taking, I only take like a bit of meat and lots of vegetables. I like salads, and I use a lot of olive oil with my dressing. And I'm like, if you're using lots and lots of oil in your salad dressing, then you're still getting lots and lots of calories from there. Just because the internet says that olive oil is healthy, it doesn't negate the fact that it's still, lots of it will lead to, lots of intake will lead to high calorie intake of the same. So there are certain misconceptions that we have been forced to work around, because we live in a world where the internet and lots of fad diets are spread. And, one will start saying just, I need a diet plan, but it has to be ketogenic, or it has to be paleo, because I've read that this is what is healthy. So we also are fighting against, a lot like the way the BMI may not necessarily be the best way to determine whether someone is healthy. It does have, there are ways in which it is applicable, yes, in determining whether someone is of a healthy body weight, but it doesn't factor in everything, because that weight could also be lots of muscle. It's almost in the same way.
Okay. So okay, yeah. So we'll use your, for Kenyans especially, and for people who really don't get the calories story. I think the plate would be good. And I think basing your majority of your food on the plant-based, and the plant is from the leaf to the root, depending on your needs, and it's best to start with that and then add your source of protein on the side. Can we talk about alcohol and water intake and coffee and tea, because we are Kenyans? Okay, who's go ahead?
So,
Oh, Sharon is okay.
Let Sharon go ahead. Sorry.
I'll speak specifically about caffeine intake. So many of us assume that if I take coffee and if I take tea, then I am taking a fluid. So I am basically hydrating. And that's something that we seek to correct very quickly, because caffeine, for it to be removed from the body, for it to be excreted, requires a lot of water. For it to be, just basically removed from the body. And so it dehydrates as opposed to hydrating. And tell people that for every cup of coffee, every cup of tea, black tea that you take, it would be ideal for you to give us, the 8 glasses of water we should take every day. Very few of us actually do that. So that's one thing I seek to clarify. And two, that very many of us have a habit of accompanying our tea and our coffee with a meal. And there are certain anti-nutrient factors, again, in our caffeine, in some of our beverages. So for instance, caffeine has tannins. And this is something that will block the uptake of iron. And I forget where I read this from, but it was a study that indicated that a number of pregnant women who would have issues with having very low iron, and not because of anything, but because they would accompany a lot of their meals with tea. We have a tendency to tell pregnant women, like, take lots of tea, take lots of fluids, and we class the tea and the porridge and the water and milk all together. So with regard to caffeine, I would indicate very clearly that tea and coffee don't count as water. Let's take the water as is in its pure form, and preferably starting with, say, two cups of water in the morning, so that we are spreading it throughout the day. Hydrating isn't just sitting with 6 cups of water and saying, it's my one good deed for the day, I am going to take water, I am going to be properly hydrated. It is spreading it throughout the day. What else did I want to say about tea and coffee? But yeah, basically those are the 2 things that I wanted to highlight, about accompanying them with meals and not counting caffeinated beverages as ways of hydrating, as opposed to, or putting them on an equal level with water.
Is the 8 glasses based on science? Because I know the current teaching from the nephrologists, who are the kidney specialists, is let thirst be your guide. Because you see, all these foods we are eating also have water in them. So you may not necessarily need 8 glasses, but you just need to take water. So Hussein, as you add on to the caffeine and the other question I asked, would you touch on the water intake also?
Currently, yes, you are correct, Prasad. The intake of water has no longer been pegged to like 6 to 8 glasses per day. Or rather, if you work better in liters, 1 to 1.5 liters per day. It's more, well, sometimes, and I think a lot of the nephrology is changing now with evidence, but one of the suggestions is what's more important probably is the color of the urine that you produce. So if it looks more like water, chances are your water intake is too high or your fluid intake is too high. If it's extremely dark yellow, then again, the suggestion is you're not taking enough. What they say is that when you need water, the body will tell you, I need something. And generally, the color of urine will remain just about, I don't know what color to call it. I guess light yellow is what they suggest should be your guide. Sharon is very correct when she says a lot of the caffeinated beverages are actually diuretic, so they drain water from your body. Same thing with alcohol. Alcohol itself is a diuretic. So the more alcohol you take, the more urine you're going to pass out. So at the end of the day, it's dehydrating. Again, it's something that has empty calories. Most of what you take, or most of the energy it gives you, is basically going to be stored in your body. You're unlikely to use it. So when you think that I've just had 2 glasses, say, of beer, you have taken a lot of carbohydrate in that amount. I mean, that's generally the reason why I guess most men who have big bellies, it's usually called a beer belly anyway, or they'll tell you, I mean, most people will joke and say, oh, they're 6 months pregnant or 9 months pregnant. I mean, that's basically all the energy you're storing back. You're not using any of it. Because once most people take alcohol, they'll take it with, say, nuts, or they'll take it with a meal. So you're adding all of that onto your extra energy for the day, and you're not using it, because more often than not, when someone's taking an alcoholic drink or something, it's at the end of the day, or when they're sitting down with friends and they're taking quite a bit, they're not doing anything active, so they're storing it. And that's why alcohol per se, wine, someone will tell you, oh, but I take wine, I don't take anything else. Wine is still an alcoholic drink, and it belongs to the same category. So at the end of the day, all of them can give you a lot of extra energy, which you don't need, and you'll store it, which means you'll gain more weight.
And in terms of caffeine, let me speak as a sleep subspecialist, sorry, because I hung out with a sleep physician for almost 2 years. So what happens with caffeine, and that's both in tea and in coffee and Red Bulls, and you have not seen, and Monster drinks, I'm telling you, you go to American stores, you faint a bit. The amount of caffeine out there is a lot. So what happens is the caffeine binds to receptors, mutajua to receptors, adenosine receptors, and it affects your sleep pressure. You know, the way, if you want to do anything, watch a child. There's something called sleep pressure. Like you play, a child plays during the day and then just accumulates that pressure to sleep, and then we'll just by 7, 8, 9 o'clock we'll check out. So caffeine affects that part of your sleep. It affects something called adenosine, so you don't get the sleep pressure, so you don't get to sleep. And especially caffeine that's taken after midday. So this Java house, everything that you're doing after noon is what's leading you to team insomnia during the night. And what Kenyans have done is to use melatonin, which doesn't help, because melatonin is only secreted at certain times of the day, and it's essential for sleep. But any more melatonin you're taking, you're just creating expensive pee. And the solution would be to just cut off your tea or coffee intake. It's 8:41, so I can still take mine, before noon, and reduce it to at least 1 or 2 cups. That's from the sleep perspective. From the anti-nutrients perspective, because we are all tea addicts, I am a tea addict. My tribe betrays me. I was weaned on tea. So this is me justifying my addiction, right? In fact, it's the highest addiction is caffeine, by the way, in the world. It's not even cocaine or anything else. It's tea. In fact, the biggest competitor of Coca-Cola is tea. It's not anything else. So, so what you tell mothers is to just take tea maybe an hour before they take their meal. That way they can sort the headache they get from withdrawal, and then they can eat the meal later. And the second thing that causes pregnant mothers in Kenya especially, and in Africa, to get iron deficiency is odoa, or the stones. The stones we eat, those things are awesome, but apart from just accumulating in your appendix, they also have anti-nutrients. They bind to the food we eat and interferes with that. I had to put my medical hat back on. Then alcohol, apart from it being a diuretic, is the way it's metabolized, and it's absorbed faster than any nutrient. Interferes with the absorption of every other nutrient, and the way it's metabolized causes something called fatty liver, which we'll discuss when we are talking about over and under nutrition, and I think that's the next step. So if we don't get in the good stuff, we suffer from over and under nutrition. And I think let's go to the over then. No, because this is Africa. Let's go to the under nutrition, and then we'll go to over. When we were doing our pediatric rotation, we saw a lot of protein energy malnutrition, kwashiorkor, marasmus, and the whole milieu of iron deficiency and everything else. Is this the same at the moment? And could you just elaborate on that? We'll start on Hussein, and because he's the pediatrician, and then we'll go to Sharon.
Okay, interestingly enough, I guess now the classification usually, to make life easier, it's taken as severe acute malnutrition, which would take care of your marasmus and kwashiorkor combined as one. So that's what it's usually called. So it's now classified as mild acute malnutrition, moderate and severe acute malnutrition. So the severe spectrum is when you have lack of both protein as well as energy in your diet. So both are lacking. As far as the incidence or the prevalence, whichever you like, has gone, unfortunately for most parts of Africa and Asia, they're usually lumped together, especially South Asia. So places like India, Bangladesh, Laos, Vietnam, and Africa, most of us, sub-Saharan Africa rather, we are lumped together. There's some studies suggesting that malnutrition in children below the age of 5 years may be as high as about 20%. That's actually the suggestion now, which means almost 1 out of every 5 children has some form of malnutrition. The severe acute malnutrition, where they would come in that category, is estimated to be roughly about 1% of the population is suggested to have it right now, which means if you're looking at about, say, 10 million children in Kenya, if you take 1%, that's a large amount of children suffering severe acute malnutrition. If we're to look at reasons behind it, a lot of it goes back to what is now being taken as the first 1,000 days of life. So from the moment a child is conceived to the time the child is about 2 years of age, that's considered the crucial period for a child, both physically and mentally in terms of growth. Unfortunately, we focus so much on the physical growth, we forget about the mental growth of a child. Yet those first 1,000 days is when the largest amount of mental growth takes place in a child. So when I'm looking at malnutrition in children, the key is to focus on children below the age of 5 years. That's where everything should begin. So if we are to look at where we go wrong, generally we go wrong from pregnancy onwards. That's where we actually go wrong. We forget about that mother who's pregnant. That's where everything goes wrong. If she does not receive the right amount of nutrition, forget about ever having any healthy children. Both, you'll either have overnourished or undernourished children simply because things went wrong in pregnancy. So it's now so important to focus on that, including the one thing we tend to neglect, which is breastfeeding. It's proven now that breast milk has everything that's responsible for growth later on in life. Up till your adulthood, breast milk has a role to play. So in terms of what people are now looking at, and everybody's going towards, let's look at prebiotics because they seem to have an idea on how they'll influence what we digest, how we digest, all our digestive disorders. Interestingly enough, breast milk is where it all began because of something called the lactobacillus. What breast milk contains will determine everything in terms of how the child digests. Should I use that term? I guess maybe I should use it. The long chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, the LC-PUFAs, that's what they're usually abbreviated as. That's what determines what a child is going to digest. And that determines a child's mental growth from about the age from when they're inside. So until the first 2 years of life. So I think where we've gone wrong is we have become, advertisement has taken over most of our healthcare, most of our nutrition. So which means we look at all the nice adverts surrounding formula milk. And we keep on thinking, formula milk is good. It can be used as a substitute for breast milk. We start weaning our children at the age of 2 months on things like uji, especially the wimbi. that itself already has some of the anti-nutrients, which means we are losing calcium, we're losing iron, we are losing some of the micronutrients as well. We are losing them from the breast milk. So I think our focus should no longer be about undernutrition and overnutrition. Our focus should be on getting nutrition right. And that begins from pregnancy. And that's where I think everything has gone wrong in most of Africa. We have let advertisement take over. We need to go back. Let's go back to insisting on breastfeeding, because that's where everything goes right. We need to focus on that. I'm against half of all these things we give children in terms of, we give them supplements. But if we got pregnancy and breastfeeding right, a lot of these things would actually not be required. I think Sharon might disagree with me there, but I think I'll leave it there.
But Hussein, how are you tackling prevention of mother-to-child in HIV transmission and breastfeeding? Are you still Titi La Mama Nibora, or how did we move to? I haven't done HIV medicine in forever, but did we move back to breastfeeding?
The message still is that breastfeeding is still the best for HIV positive mothers as well. Yes, there's that microscopic chance of transmission from mother to child through breast milk, but it's nothing that medication, the antiretrovirals, cannot prevent. There is a slim chance a child may still end up getting HIV positive, but the benefits of breast milk far outweigh the risks in such mothers as well. Because it's, in some cases, it's the only nutrition that a mother can afford to give her child. Well, probably majority of instances, they cannot afford anything else. So it does become crucial that even in those HIV positive mothers, they should still breastfeed exclusively. So now you don't mix anything, just exclusive breastfeeding, at least for the first 6 months of life. It's still advocated for.
Okay. Sharon, do you concur with who's over here?
I actually agree with him largely, because I have worked in hospital settings before and have seen that if the mothers who had just given birth had the information they needed about how to eat properly and what to eat, then they would have, their bodies would have been, would have been a more ideal space of incubation for their babies. And now we are not just talking about, it's as basic as, knowing that they need to up their iron intake, because very many, and this is just from my personal experience, very many people will know to see a nutritionist or to talk to someone once they have conceived or once they're pregnant, but very few of them will think to do it before, because there is such a thing as preconception diet, like how to change how you're eating in preparation for pregnancy. So I do agree with Dr. Hussein, especially with regard to prevention. If we're able to get these parents to, the ideal body weight, and to get them to be eating healthy, well-balanced meals, so that by the time they're conceiving and they're growing as babies, it's just, we're not just boosting, we're just now improving a little here and there, because yes, you are eating for two, but you're not doing a complete overhaul on how you used to eat before. And eventually we'll also see it show, and when these parents start to feed, this information starts to show when these parents start to feed their children, whether it's getting them, we now call it, complementary feeding. When you've gotten them off breast milk, what do you start them off with? Understanding that now they're running out of their iron stores, and we need to start giving them foods rich in iron, and we need to start giving them fruit, etc. So that you will see a parent thinking that at 1 year, 2 years, the child should still be eating pre-pureed foods, or that they're okay with, giving them snacks. The people who think that Weetabix is actually food, and also just generally, and things like giving children, rice and cabbage. And these are things that we saw back when I was studying clinical nutrition, and now mostly it's lifestyle, but we still see parents feeding their kids like that, frying rice.
Is it me or Sharon as
tomatoes and onions, and thinking that will suffice? So if they don't feel like French fries or some potatoes, sorry.
Yeah, you're hanging, and what you can do, by the way, is just go off video and then just talk, because sometimes that's what happens in the land of 1G network. I always make fun of Kenyan network. and yeah, just talk. Yeah, just try. Let's see if it will hang now. Go ahead, Sharon. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, Hussein
All
has
right. Can you hear me better now?
Okay, are you on top of a tree now?
So what I was essentially recapping on was what Dr. Hussein had said about making sure that the information is out there to eat properly before the pregnancy, and of course during the pregnancy and after. And also just basically giving parents a very clear guideline on what healthy eating is, you know, and what a balanced meal looks like, and that children do not have to be given pureed foods all the way to 1.5 years, and just making sure that this information is out there. Because as I had been saying earlier, is we still have parents. Yes, sorry.
No, I'm just wondering what changed when I used to, my sister is here. So when I used to take my niece to the clinic at Joseph Kangefe and KNH in 1997, yeah, 97, before med school, 1997, we used to be put aside according to your gestation. I wasn't pregnant then, but I mean, the mothers used to be put aside according to their gestation and according to their children's ages. This is Joseph Kangefe over there in Woodley, basically serving the people of Kibra, and Kenyatta basically serving the people of Kibra number line Sabah. So we used to be put in different like set groupings. People who are pregnant, people who are fast, the babies are 1 to 3, people who are 3 to 6, and be given nutritional counseling. And when I think back, they did an awesome job. Then KNH just cut that program. I'm just wondering, is it still going on like this? Are these nutritional counseling clinics still going on in our county? I think it's county facilities, or what happened?
It rightfully so. A lot of the city council facilities still offer that service. So you'll find if you go through most of the urban areas where the city council facilities are functional, almost all of those antenatal clinics and the postnatal clinics will give you that advice, and they're doing an amazing job. But where we lose out is that minority of these children are born within the cities. Mm-hmm. Majority of our children are born rural. Now, a lot of the mothers in the rural areas cannot make it for a lot of the antenatal postnatal clinics. Most of them go for the vaccination clinics, and once the children get the 9 months measles vaccine, that's it. Majority will never come back to a clinic again, and you'll not see them until the next time they conceive. So it means that we are losing that link between the community and the healthcare provider. We have focused on the nutritionist and the doctor as the person providing that source of information, which is actually completely wrong. It needs to go the other way. The community health worker and the nurse should be the most important person in that cycle, because they're closest to every community you visit. And that's where we've gone wrong. We have lost that. We have taken that power away from the community health worker and the nurses. They are not being educated. So we are losing out in the community.
But also the urban elites are suffering because, okay, I used to do most of the nutritional counseling for the people who I used to see in AAR because I was pregnant and I had gotten nutritional information from Joseph Kangefe Clinic. And because of reading, but I'm just some of our obstetricians and pediatricians in the well-to-do clinics are doing a horrible job. I just looked at one of our classmates' nutritional advice the father had been given after a stroke. I almost got a stroke myself. It was terrible. So in as much as the rural people will be served by the community health worker. I don't think I ever saw a community health worker in Nairobi or in any urban city during my working years. Yeah. Are they still, Sharon, are they still there?
The community health workers I have encountered, because I haven't worked in a hospital setting for a while, but the ones that I have encountered are the ones I've seen in informal settlements. So whether that is Gorogosho or, you know, and yes, or Kibra and places like that, where there's information that needs to be disseminated into a big, you know, a large area, and that this information has to be passed down to people who will go and pass it on to other people, etc. So that is where I have seen it, mostly in informal settlements, and especially when when there's a campaign being run about something, whether it's a particular condition, whether it's creating awareness about Linda Mama, for instance, and telling women that it is important to go to hospital and get checked and to prepare for, you know, the baby that's coming, and knowing that they will not have to pay for the services that they'll need when they go to hospital. But when there's a campaign, I see that happening, and in informal settlements. But for the hospital setting, I cannot speak for that though.
Because some of these parents who are giving fried rice and cabbage are well-to-do parents, right?
Yes,
Sharon.
shockingly, yes, because you know, we used to think it was just the women who were running saloons, or the women at the vibandas selling vegetables. But then we also see it with, you know, women who in our minds, we would assume would know better.
And I know the original Kilimani moms, the one that way when Facebook had started, had an awesome, used to do an awesome job to cater for these middle income and higher middle income earners, and educate them on stuff like that. But then we know what happened to Kilimani moms, it became something else. But I'm wondering, for parents who are middle class and the pediatrician or the obstetrician doesn't have time for them, is there like a forum that people can sit and talk? Like, I'm almost willing to host it, my gosh, because sometimes I feel like slapping my own people. Is there a forum that can benefit them like that? I'm just wondering, do you know of any?
Not that I've seen that's formally controlled. So there are a lot of informal, like, I guess, websites and bloggers and Facebook pages and all, where people, the social media rather, where people provide you with information that very often is based on their, how do I put it? Not based on
personal experience.
Not based on scientific fact, not based on any evidence that it actually works. So there are a lot of those kind of things that are going on around right now. And then somebody decides to check on the net and says, oh, I found that this diet works very well for all children living with autism. I think we should try it. I found this diet works very well for all children living with epilepsy. I think we should try it. And that becomes a fad, it becomes popular, and everyone else tries it out. So in the process of doing that, you now throw these children into a whole new circus, which they never get out of. And which is why I think it's the problem with, I guess, the current setup is that even in the urban setting, you have the upper class who will not talk to anyone but the private pediatrician. Private pediatrician very often may not have time to offer you any advice because they're too busy clearing the queues or whatever they're doing. Then there's the middle class who will go to any kind of healthcare setting that's available to them, they will enter it. There's the lower middle class who don't have access to a lot of this kind of services or information. And then there's those living, the lowest class who live within the informal settlements. Interestingly enough, those might be better off than anyone else because they have access to the nurses and the community health workers. So it becomes a cycle of trying to find out which set of people do you want to target and can you intervene with. Then you come to the rural setup where somebody does not have access to a lot of electronic media, the best source of information is either printed materials or face-to-face conversations. So it's multiple sets of people we're dealing with. It's not, we can't have a solution to fix everything for everyone in one package. It has to be spread out.
Okay. I'm still thinking of a solution, but Sharon, I know Hussein did the undernutrition for his pet people, the children. Are you able to tackle undernutrition in the adults, on the adult side, as you answer Damaris's question on she works out and eats a lot? Of course, I have my thoughts on that, but let's go with the panelists first. So Sharon, just talk about undernutrition, and I think we touched base, and I would like you to talk about sarcopenia, if you, yeah, and especially for the mamas who come to the States. Okay, let me give you, let me set the setting for sarcopenia. So the mamas who, like, if I bring my mother, Mary Katon Donga, to the States, Mary Katon Donga in Luanda Doho right now is when she's resting. She's been up and about in the shamba the whole day, talking to neighbors, doing digging. I even got peanuts from her through my sister-in-law the other day. So she's busy working and eating and doing all these things. Then I bring Mary Kato to Winterland, and she just stays in the house and stays in the house and gets depressed, doesn't move her muscles, and still eats American chicken and American cake and bread, which doesn't rot sometimes. And so she suffers the maladies of well-to-do-ness in the land of idleness. I think I've set it up well. Sharon, go ahead.
Thank you for the setup. And I'll just start by indicating that, shockingly, there are times when you will find that even here, because of very little activity, and you know, we joke about being couch potatoes. We live in a world where we now are able to wake up very early in the morning before the sun rises, and to beat crazy Mombasa road traffic or Langata road traffic, you get into your car, you get into a matatu, you head to work, you know, go up using the lift, and you sit at your desk all day. And again, to avoid traffic in the evening, you leave very late, and then you know, you head home well after dark. And there's a lot of sitting, and you get home, you're exhausted, you just want to sit in front of your TV and catch up on news and head to bed after a meal, and then wake up and do the same thing. And over the weekend, you were so tired, all you want to do is sleep in. And so let's go back to the picture you've painted of someone who had an active lifestyle here, was able to move around and get some sun and get some walking done, and therefore build muscle and improve, you know, on bone health, and then head into a place where they're hardly getting sun, and they're also not just barely moving, they are just, I mean, they're not as physically active as they were before. And this is a great concern, because the you know, the more cars we buy, and we are really feeding into that lifestyle. Sometimes we feel that we are doing it to, you know, when you're bringing your mother over, for instance, to visit you, in your heart of hearts, you feel like, you know, you're giving her the best life. You're showing her around, you're showing her that she's done well, and her kids are able to support her. And forgetting, well, not really forgetting, but maybe not being aware of the fact that that inactivity, or rather the activity she was engaging in when she was back home, and the foods she was eating when she was back home, the whole foods and the sun that she was getting, were all doing stuff to benefit her. And so, and especially, and with regard to what you've also mentioned about getting depressed because of being indoors, with COVID, so many of us working on our screens and being home all the time, you know, we just have this it's, well, there are people who say that there were issues with our mental health already, but this has exacerbated the situation, because you tend to feel like you're alone. You may be in company, you may have a few family members around, but we are not moving around as much as we did before. And so basically, sarcopenia would be described as the loss of muscle mass and you know, and strength, again, primarily because of aging, but it could also be as a result of inactivity. And this also, you know, highlights other issues like, you know, loss of bone mass, whether it's osteoporosis and osteopenia, Because when we talk about bone health, or if it's, well, muscle health is something that we can do through the course of life. But with regard to bone health, studies have shown that we basically build our bones in our youth. So somewhere between 15, 16 and about 30 is when we are building our bones. And it's through diet, of course. We have to eat our calcium-rich foods. We have to get vitamin D, from the sun. We have to engage in exercise to build our bones and muscles for strength. But then if we, over a period of time, do not eat the right foods and do not engage in physical activity, when we get older, that's when the results start to show for some of the things that we neglected to do when we were younger.
Hussein, do you want to add anything on to the sarcopenia story?
No, it's just that I think one of the ways to overcome a lot of that is don't think of exercise, even for children, simply as, let's say for the older children and older people going to the gym. That simply does not cater for half the people we have. I mean, something as simple as going out with your children, playing with them, riding a bicycle with them means you delay muscle wasting, you delay any physical activity means as you strengthen the muscle, you will actually give bones some strength as well. So it's now been proven that even people who are above the age of 60 should use light weights when they're training out. It actually improves their bone mass, improves their joint function. It actually makes it better for them to do that. So when I see people telling, oh, don't take the stairs, you don't have to. It's like at this age, it's dangerous. You'll do this to your knees. Then the stairs will not harm you. Climb, but climb slowly. Wear good shoes. Don't damage your joints. So the assumption is that we have made exercise a punishment. It actually is not a punishment. It can be incorporated every day into your lifestyle, even when people are at work. Something as simple as getting up after 1 hour of being slouched over a desktop or a computer over your desk, getting out, going for just a 5-minute walk around, coming back, sitting like just simple squats up and down in your room for a few seconds, stretching, going back, has been shown to delay muscle wasting, has been shown to delay osteoporosis at that, but actually shown to be beneficial. So, I mean, the only problem is that we assume that exercise means, because if you look at almost all the people, you'll be told 20 to 30 minutes of brisk activity 3 to 4 times a week. So you must achieve your 1.5 hours a week. You must achieve your 10,000 steps. A lot of those are misdirected information. 10,000 steps means nothing. It actually came about simply because of somebody's work who realized every time they took 10,000 steps, they probably walked for about half an hour, 45 minutes in a day. And now everybody's wearing their nice smartwatches, their Fitbits, and trying to count, did I take 10,000 steps or 6,000 steps a day? And that's where we've gone wrong. Exercise can be anything, repeated 5 minutes every hour during your work day, which means at a 10-hour work day, you've actually done 50 minutes of activity. And that's where I think we've gone wrong.
And there's something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I know we scientists have like fancy words for everything. Let me just share what it looks like. Just give me one. Okay, let me share what it looks like. Okay, am I on the neat slide?
Yes.
Yeah, am I on the neat slide?
Yes.
Yeah. So the activities which are exercise and don't look like exercise, and they include, okay, like here in the States, it's a huge thing. Walking your dog, Hussein just walking up and down, and then some. In Luo we say goyo dasta, just cleaning your house. I know we've relegated a lot of work to our house helps and maids. So if we just took up some of this work, it would help improve improve our lives. Most of the elderly people here, once they take a fall, that's it, as in they never recover, and it's downhill after that. And I'm seeing it in the Kenyan elderly people who we are importing here to live a better life. People ask me why I haven't brought my mother here. I'm like, she's better off in Kenya. She's happier. She moves around. She can just come and visit me and say hi and see what snow is. But she actually lives a better and healthier life than her counterparts here because of the movement and the vitamin D exposure. And I think a study was done in amongst adults in Nairobi, and they were found to be vitamin D deficiency. And it's all that thing. We move from the car to the from the house to the car to your office. You send your office tea girl for your food, and then back again. You might pass through the pub because we all drink, and then go back home. And we repeat this and over and over again. And we wonder why we are getting sicker and fatter. I'd just like to address Damaris's question on working out and eating a lot. You need to okay, no, Hussein and Sharon don't want me to discuss calories, but for someone who works out, at least you have the basic knowledge of calories. You need to up your protein intake, and you can look for me on the side. At least I can guide you. You need to up your protein intake because protein is king when you're working out. It keeps you fuller for longer. It helps you maintain your muscle mass, and then you just need your carbohydrates for the energy, which you expend once you're working out. But what will save you from getting hungry all the time is to up your protein intake. And we can whoever gave you this link can share my details with you, and then we can talk on the side. But that's a basic way to go about it. Nora, we are gonna have the discussion on menopause in January, so I would encourage you to join then. But basically, it's just the same story. Eat right and walk, and at least work out. YouTube has very many things. If you're lacking water in your house, go carry the kibuyu yourself. That's a form of exercise. And if you want weights, like I have weights in my house, just buy them. I can always link you up with someone who can do that for you. And as we are discussing the undernutrition, before we go to the overnutrition side, can you touch on eating disorders? And that's bulimia, anorexia, and the new fat. It's not new, by the way. I checked it. It was found out in the 80s. Orthorexia nervosa. Just touch on those, because we are also suffering from them. We used to think it's a white people disease, but it's a problem that we Africans are contending with at the moment.
Okay, I mean, with orthorexia nervosa, I'll be pretty straight with you. I don't deal with that much. I guess I hand it over to Judy and her team quite fast. But bulimia and anorexia, yes, we are now seeing a lot more of it. Maybe it's because we've been more aware of it, I suspect. Or maybe it's because with a lot more of our population being urbanized these days, they have access to a lot more of the social media, which means the true ideal of what your body physique should be keeps on cropping up. And there was a time when it was just a problem with the teenagers, starting from about 15, 16 years onwards. Nowadays, we are seeing it in children as young as 8 years of age. So unfortunately, the 8 to 10-year-olds have now been influenced to believe that there's something that exists, which is called an ideal body. So they all want to be slim. They all want to be considered so-called quotes healthy. So the unfortunate thing is, in the process of all that purging and all that, which they keep on doing, they are losing both the macronutrients and the micronutrients. Now, the focus currently has been that we keep on telling them, eat because you need to grow. Yes, that is partly true. They have the growth spurt at puberty, adolescence, which they need to grow. But what we are not being very truthful about is that what's suffering the most is actually brain growth. So the IQ potential is what we've interfered with most because of the bulimia and the anorexia. I won't go into management of such things because that's a whole ballgame which Judy will tell you can take close to 6 to 8 hours to discuss. But the part of that problem comes down to our parenting these days. A lot of our parents are remote control mode. So most of the children are raised by nannies, they're raised by relatives or siblings who are taking care of most of the younger ones. And in the process of doing that, their nutrition has been totally ignored. So now we have a set of children who, below 5 years, suffered nutritional insult. Again, from the age of about 8 years to 12 years, suffer the second set of nutritional insult, which means you have 2 periods of growth spurt which have been affected. So when we see some of these things we're seeing now, children burning schools, children doing all sorts of odd things, taking alcohol, taking most of the substances of abuse, becoming adults who now have mental issues, who now have all the chronic disease, diabetes, hypertension, all those problems setting in. It not begin these are, strictly speaking, are not adulthood diseases. There's very strong, I guess, correlation as well as association that most of this started from childhood. And that's where we are losing the battle. How to get involved in schools such that from primary school onwards, you always have somebody doing the nutritional work in schools, teaching children what's right, what's wrong. So they become advocates themselves. We assume children don't know, but it's actually interesting that children can come back home and tell their parents that this is what I should be eating because this is what I need to grow. And that's where I think we need to focus on, not the parents anymore. The parents have lost the game a long time ago. We need to focus on the children.
And Judy is who's a classmate who's a psychiatrist. So when who just keeps dropping Judy here, it's the one, and she deals with mostly adolescents. Sharon, are you seeing any of the eating disorders on your side? Or let me clarify what orthorexia is. Orthorexia are those people who are obsessed with counting calories, making sure they never eat a fry in their life. They always eat healthy. It's a disorder. And it's being seen in both men and women. And I've noticed it in the male physicians on this side who are into low carb diets. They are very orthorexic and they don't have insight. It is so sad. But Sharon, are you seeing the eating disorders from your end?
Yes, I have, and especially with young people. And when I say young people, I mean teenagers. So, and when you dig deep and find out where these issues come from, you'll be surprised to hear that a number of these kids are hearing things at home, like if you have a parent who's obsessing about dieting, or if you have a parent who was just newly diagnosed with an illness, and there wasn't a sort of discussion to help, these kids understand what is really going on, then there comes, a number of them will either go to Dr. Google or go talk about it with their friends in school and come back with this, either way, come back to a conclusion that, okay, how I eat affects, how I look. And so if it is in the case of an illness, there are people who, there are young kids who I know have started cutting out carbohydrates and they're like, I don't want to be as heavy as mom, or I don't want to get diabetes and stuff like that. So that's basically where I hear most of the conversations taking place with the younger clients that I've had. So it is a real issue. And one of the things, because when I meet my clients, I like to, as far as possible, especially when dealing with the younger ones, to sort of have as many family members involved, especially the ones they live with, to just tell people to be mindful about how we talk about food in front of children and younger people and people who are impressionable. If we demonize carbohydrates, or if we are very particular about how we eat, kids are very intuitive. They'll notice if your plate looks a certain way or looks different from the way theirs looks like. And if they have questions, if you dismiss them, they will go looking for the answers elsewhere. Yeah.
Okay. So can we move on to overnutrition? And Sharon, you can start on the overnutrition side, and this, the obesities, the overconsumption of vitamins and everything, and all these things that people sell online in the form of supplements.
Okay. So overweight and obesity. I mean, basically, this one is sort of straightforward. So one is classed as being overweight if we use the BMI, which is basal metabolic index, to see body mass index. Why am I saying basal? Body mass index, which is we take, you know, your weight and your height squared, and we figure out within a certain range whether you are or are not overweight. So when you're overweight, it's when your BMI is from 20 to about 24.9, and then 25 and above, then you're classed as being obese. Sorry, I have that mixed up. When you're classed as being overweight, it is because your BMI is up until 24.9. And then, so when someone is classed as being obese, there's certain, or overweight, there's certain risk factors that come with it. And, you know, you have, whether it's insulin resistance, you're concerned about type 2 diabetes and blood pressure, and basically, you know, cardiovascular disease. And this has been linked to, again, how you eat. It's not just it's one, the quality of food you're eating. If you're eating very highly processed foods, that's, you know, your junk and your pizza and lots of soda, because in place of what we used to have as the beer gut, beer belly, we now have the sugar belly, where you're taking a lot of soft drinks and so highly processed foods, very high in fat and you know, biscuits and cookies and all that stuff, junk essentially. But also there's a concern of eating too much. So when we talk about the plate, we're saying that we sometimes have this tendency to eat like a lot of ugali and a lot of meat and very few vegetables, or sometimes leaving vegetables out completely. So that is also a concern, because if you're eating, whether it's highly processed carbohydrates or foods, or just a lot of carbs and very few vegetables and very little protein, which is, as you've clarified, are slow digesting and therefore will keep you full for longer. Same thing with vegetables, because they're high in fiber, they'll keep you full for longer. Then you wind up having that, what we'll say, high calorie intake, and that will start to show. So and we've already talked, I've already mentioned like the risk factors for, I mean, the concerns that you have, the health concerns you have about, that come about from being overweight or obese. And also inactivity or very little physical activity. We'd already highlighted this when we were talking about exercise. Very many people tend to assume that exercise is supposed to be very strenuous and very painful or difficult. So if I don't go to the gym, I do nothing. And yet there are those things that you can do just for a few minutes every day, whether it's go for a walk or you know, help out with the chores, help that you can engage in to basically keep you physically active. So that's basically what I would say about overweight and obesity. The thing that I have noticed though is where we used to have overweight and mostly overweight and obesity showing up when people are older, we now have people who are younger and more children, you know, younger children, even in primary school, having these concerns, coming in with very high BMI, or being, and I don't want to say this I don't want to sound insulting, but where you see a child who basically looks like a small adult. They have a lot of excess fat, especially around the abdominal area. They have trouble moving around or running about. And usually when you investigate, you find that it will just lead back to what it is they're eating and how physically active they are. So that's pretty much a recap of that.
And I think, Hussein, you're seeing more of that, and it's troubling the pediatricians in calculating the dosage of drugs these small adults are supposed to get because of the lifestyle choices we've made for our children. Let me just add a caveat on vegetables. You have to be very careful when you're taking vegetables because of the osmosis. We learned this, right? So the thing with vegetables, you remember the digestion of most of the fiber is not digested, so it pulls water from your system. And for some people, let me give an example. I had to ditch my traditional vegetables. My mother is weeping because they give me the runs. And it's you may just be more sensitive to some vegetables more than other people. Just remember, anything that comes from a plant, as in from the leaf to the root, can be is beneficial to you. Shop in Indian stores, shop in Parklands, shop in everything, and you need to move beyond kunde, managu, osuga. There are more vegetables out there that would agree with your tummy, and they don't have as many calories as some of the foods you're eating out here. So it's a basic idea of kissing very many frogs until you find the one. So like for me, I experimented until I found the vegetables that agree with my system. So if you're having too much waste product and it's not of the solid material, you need to reconsider the kind of vegetables you're taking. And for some of us, it could be also be, which we didn't discuss, lactose deficiency and insufficiency. But Hussein, the question I asked you about small adults in terms of pediatric age. And you can add on to my vegetables spiel.
Right. Okay. I might just leave you in about the next 3 minutes, almost sunset. So I might leave you, but yeah, let me just start. So what I'm going to focus on is that there's been a surge. So what most of sub-Saharan Africa is seeing now is where Europe and North America was in the mid-80s, 90s. So they left their obesity spike or surge, and we are now facing it. So I think something that would change slightly for us is a lot of the times for children, the body mass index may not apply exactly. So we would focus more on the weight for age and the height for age. When you start going above the 90th percentile for weight and height for age on those growth charts, we get worried. It means now you're heading towards danger line, zone. So that's what would, I guess, be a little bit more accurate for us for the children below maybe the age of about 8 to 10 years. Adolescents now can follow the adult path, and then the body mass index becomes quite useful for them. Unfortunately, the diet has changed. So interestingly enough, what was once thought to be a disease of the affluent, it's obesity in the informal settlements of Nairobi is much higher than some of the other settlements. It's because foods that are dense in fats and processed stuff are cheaper than healthy foods currently if you need to purchase them. So it's a mistake to think that the informal settlements have more of undernourished versus overnourished. They have almost an equal balance of both right now. There have a lot of children who are overnourished, yet lacking in a lot of the other macro and micronutrients. So that's where we're actually having trouble currently. Trying to get these children back on the right track becomes extremely difficult, because if you have a child who's 6 years, weighing, for example, 50 or 60 kilos, trying to bring this child back to about the ideal, which would be just around 25 to 30 kilos, becomes almost impossible, which means they get less active and they put themselves at now all the other lifestyle diseases. So hypertension, you find that some of these children are already pre-hypertensive at the age of 12 years. They already have insulin resistance by the time they're 12 years, which means now they're already heading towards diabetes by the time they're 15, 20. And that's where the battle actually is. How do we teach people what is healthy? Yes, that's actually more useful for me for children now. It gives me a good idea about the length and weight for that child at a specific age. So if you look at the right side, that 90, 95th and 100, all those lines have numbers next to them. So the moment we start crossing 75th centile, we're getting overweight. above 90th centile, we are now obese as far as children go. So sometimes you have to be a little bit mean to parents when they walk into your room. They don't understand when you tell them your child is a bit too heavy, your child is a bit too, is obese. They don't understand some of those terms. You often have to be blunt and have to tell a parent, your child is fat for the age. They will have trouble later on in life if you do not control this weight. I don't think we should be afraid to use that term sometimes. It's not about teaching them that the body is deformed. It's about telling them the truth that this child is in danger now. That's what we need to emphasize on.
Okay. We'll say dua for us. Okay, we have to release Hussein. Yes, to go do his prayers, but we will remain with Sharon. If you, I don't know if you, how long are prayers?
If you're still on in about the next 10-15 minutes, I'll be back.
Okay, you can always be shy. We don't know how long we'll go, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how
All
long.
right,
Yeah, just pray for us.
okay.
Also. Okay.
All right then. Just that.
Okay. Sharon, let's move to the nutrition myths. And you know, my favorite one is that food ferments in the stomach, and then you can add yours, what you've had out. Oh, wait, before we talk about that, let's just talk about overnutrition in terms of vitamin intakes. And this is not something we talk about a lot, because most of us are undernourished in the micronutrient sector. But with the onset of Amazon and all these things people shipping to Kenya and everywhere else, we are finding people are consuming stuff that has a lot of vitamins, a lot of food additives that shouldn't be there. And Sharon, could you touch on that and then just go to the food myths?
All righty. So when one, the way food is made, the way God made food is so that it would take a lot for you to eat enough carrots to have hypervitaminosis, to have an excess, to take in an excess of vitamin A. And which also takes us back to, just a little bit back to why, for instance, I tell people to eat their foods whole. Let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. So essentially, like, eat your food, eat it whole, and just, again, always make sure that you have a balanced plate, that you have all the major food groups represented. Now, with the everyone sells supplements these days. They'll tell you that they're good for detoxing the liver or the colon, and they're good for clearing your gut if you have any gut issues. And especially now that we also are having an issue where very many women are having issues with the hormonal imbalance. So you're told that, this has zinc and magnesium and has all these other things that you need. And yet we do not understand that we have what we call recommended daily allowances for nutrients, for micronutrients. So there's a certain amount of calcium that you should consume every day. There's a certain amount of vitamin C that you should consume every day. If you ate 4 oranges instead of 1, you'd be fine. But if you're taking it in a concentrated form, that is in the form of a supplement, then you're in trouble. Because there are people walking around, taking supplements every day without realizing that they're poisoning themselves. And I actually wanted to say that very intentionally. Excessive intake of nutrients in modified form is poisoning yourself. And why I'm saying this is because you'll find people taking, chlorophyll, or taking, just because it's been recommended by someone who calls themselves a specialist or a doctor. And I see them in Nairobi in town at archives, and, it looks green, so you think it's healthy. There's been a moringa craze where add moringa to everything that you take, or baobab is good for you. And I'm not saying that these do not have any health benefits, but there's a danger when something isn't regulated. It's basically, you don't know how much of it you should be taking, and you don't know how frequently. Now, if you have an understanding of what your recommended daily allowances are, and these are available even on the internet, and you can talk to your doctor and get them, or your nutritionist, They're basically listed as how much vitamin C should you take every day, how much vitamin A should you take every day, how much, of everything that you should take every day, so that if you're taking it in food, you're fine. But if you're taking it in a supplement, then that becomes particularly dangerous because it is in a high concentration. So that is something I needed to point out. And this is, I'm not trying to attack anyone, but by the time you're getting supplements from someone, let it be only after it has been recommended. If you've gone to see a doctor and you've been told that you're low on iron or you're low on, vitamin D, they should be able to prescribe for you what it is exactly that you should take. If you're pregnant, the same should also happen. And this is also to address health-seeking behavior. Very many of us feel, and it touches on nutrition a little, but also medication. When you feel like you're not well, the first thing we often do is go to the shop and buy something that will help us feel better and, treat the symptom, or go to the chemist. If you go to Dr. Google, you go to your phone and you Google something and you see that you have 5 out of 12 symptoms and they tell you that you're deficient in something, we're very quick to go to the chemist and buy a supplement, or to ask that friend of ours who works at a multi-level company, multi-level marketing, whether they have a certain supplement to fix something, or they start to describe to you symptoms that you have. If you have, especially those who've been newly diagnosed with lifestyle conditions, you've been told that you have diabetes, and someone comes and tells you that, it can be reversed if you eat a certain way, if you take certain supplements. Let's be very wary of information that we cannot confirm or that is not founded on science. So even when getting supplements, there are supplements that are, that can be trusted. You can go to a chemist and get osteocare and all these others, or you can get your vitamin C supplements, but be very wary of taking something that's just been dished out to you by someone who does not have that authority to be giving them to you, or if they've not been prescribed.
And the supplements are very specific, like for pregnancy, folic acid is important for the formation of the brain and the spinal cord. And you might suffer deficiency from iron, so you'll be given iron. If you get like a bout of measles, you'll be given vitamin A because it affects your immunity. It helps with the disease during the healing process. And in the US, all newborns are given vitamin K because the newborn's liver is not able to make vitamin K, and some infants have bled to death. So it's a dandy. Like if you deliver a child here, they'll be given vitamin K. And for us who live towards the North Pole, we are given vitamin D because we are darker, and the sun, like right now, the sun is just over there, it disappears. So they're specific, as Sharon has said. And so just be wary of what you're buying out there. And just remember the Swahili saying, chema chajiuza kibaya chajitembeza. And a lot of these supplements out here have been proven by the FDA here to just be fake stuff. So you have to be very careful what you're buying and what you're consuming. And just like I said, shop widely, shop in the Indian store, shop in Marikiti, shop everywhere, and just eat a whole rainbow of foods. You will get all the nutrients you need. Sharon, let's go ahead and tackle the meats, and you can, the one you're tackling is food ferments in the stomach, and then we can go on.
We will not have peace until we handle this one.
No, that one, if you don't, I'm throwing you out.
And this is something I've actually heard with people, that, certain food combinations will ferment in the stomach, or food ferments in the stomach. And I keep wondering, like, how is it, like, the stomach, the way it's built, or the way our bodies are built, food would not be able to ferment in the stomach. Like, if anything, we would say it would ferment in the intestines, because that's where you have like the fiber and the husks and all that stuff that has come, all that soluble and insoluble fiber basically fermenting to produce gas, I mean. And that actually has a function. It feeds your good bacteria, because there's good and bad bacteria. So it feeds your good bacteria, and which is why fiber is fantastic. And secondly, it produces gases which help push fecal waste along, good things. But food fermenting in the stomach is a story. It's a lie. And there are certain food combinations that may make you gassy, but that does not necessarily mean that that food fermented in your stomach. It takes a lot for food to ferment, and it doesn't happen in the stomach. So for instance, as Posa has said, there's a lot of shopping around to do, and there's also a lot of learning how your body functions. So for instance, the people who say when they combine cabbage with peas, they have a problem. Or if you combine cabbage and beans, you tend to be more gassy than usual. Find what works for you. Yeah, sorry.
No, then don't combine.
Yeah, then don't combine them. So
Yeah.
you can always use a different vegetable, even if you have grown eating cabbage or sukuma wiki and spinach or terere as the vegetables that you know, try something different. Try lettuce, try broccoli, try cauliflower. These are all very good vegetables, and learn which combinations work for you and which ones don't. And so for instance, wheat also tends to make people incredibly gassy, but even worse when you combine them. So one of the most common is if you combine beans and cabbage and chapati. Very many people will say that that combination just does wonders for how much gas they can produce. And of course, depending on what we are eating, what we see passing out of our bodies will be different. So just be mindful of what works for you and what doesn't. Our bodies are different. Someone will say that if they take, even with people who have ulcers, you'll find that some will not be able to eat kale, no sukuma wiki at all. But then others will say they have no problem with that, but if they eat something else, another traditional vegetable, they have a problem. So it's not one size fits all. I don't know if I have handled that.
Yeah, yes, and just remember the stomach has hydrochloric acid. So there's you're not fermenting anything else. And let me just share something over here. We don't talk about it a lot. Just give me a minute. Yeah, we don't talk about it a lot, but this could be the other reason we are feeling like we are fermenting stuff in our stomach. This is the map for lactose intolerance in the world. Mumeona pale Kenya iko. I don't are you seeing, like, almost all of us are lactose intolerant? Yep. And we just keep taking our tea, like me, who still takes my tea, and suffer and think we are fermenting stuff. We are not digesting the milk. We are just we are not digesting the milk, and that's why some of us are more gassy and just having more runny stools that are stink bombs. It could just be lactose intolerance, and you just need to either take a lactate pill. And I think the lactose-free milk finally made it to Kenya. I saw Carol Mutoko over advertising it another day over there. Okay, the next myth.
Okay, I have a few personal favorites. So one of the ones that I think annoys me to Timbuktu is about carbs. Every time someone starts a conversation with, so I shouldn't eat carbs, then what do I eat? Or carbs are bad because they will cause you to gain weight, or, people basically, we very many of us think that carbohydrates are created equal. Your brown ugali is not the same as your white ugali from the shop. Totally different. That's why you will eat a smaller amount of brown ugali and it will fill you up faster than your white ugali from the shop. Your brown rice and your white rice, not exactly the same. So when we say that there are good carbohydrates, believe it, because if it's your brown rice, if it is your brown ugali, there's a debate about brown bread because you don't know which one has been added food color, etc. We still have issues of quality control there. But carbohydrates are not created equal. And secondly, stepping away from the flours, I tell people to eat foods that are closer to the parent form. You'd rather have, for instance, a cob of boiled maize or roast maize because that has more fiber. And then when it's ground up into flour, then it becomes, there's less fiber in there, it's more processed. And if it's white flour, it's been sifted like what we have in shops, then, the quality keeps reducing the more we process it. So carbohydrates are not created equal. Your arrowroots, your sweet potatoes are good for you, and everything in moderation. Now, this one sort of steps into something else, which is oil. Very many people have come to me assuming that just because olive oil is touted as being healthy, and it is healthy, that we can take copious amounts of it with no consequences. That is not true. If you use half a cup of oil in your salad dressing, for every tablespoon of oil you're using, that's about 100 calories. So it's basically everything in moderation, meaning, for instance, you can actually use lemon or lime to dress a salad. You can use a little olive oil, yes, but you don't have to pour it over because it is healthy. The same goes for avocado, the same goes for peanuts, and cashew nuts and almonds. Nuts are very high in fat content, so we should eat them in moderation. If you buy the ones that are roasted on the streets, the ones that go for about 20 shillings, which would only fit about the palm of your hand, that's about enough. If you're eating half a bowl of them, then we have a problem. So just because it is plant-based or it is natural doesn't mean that you necessarily have to eat copious amounts, or that if you eat copious amounts of it, it will be to no consequence.
And Sharon, and that's why I put up this slide. If people have the basic knowledge of what they're eating, it's good. Because you see, that 1 teaspoon of this whole kibuyu of olive oil, it still has 9 calories per gram. So you're just over there overpouring olive oil, and you're still, it adds up. And for the carbohydrates, just remember from this point of just go back to your class 6, part of a plant. All those things are carbohydrates. And and part of the plant has, of course, proteins, fat, and everything else. So when someone is telling you they are not eating carbs, they are not eating leaves, they're not eating stems, they're not eating the root, and they're not eating anything that's over here. It's very hard to do that. And I think the other bit is when people think about fruits, they only think of fruits which have sugar that we can, the fructose, like the sweet sugar.
Fruit.
Tomatoes are anything. Just remember, go back to part of a plant. Anything that has seeds inside is a fruit. You'll be shocked that some of the nuts we eat are actually considered botanically fruits. When you think of it that way, you can hardly go a day without eating carbohydrates. Yeah. Okay.
And right along there with carbs being bad, that porridge ujiawimbi will give you a pot belly. No, if it's the only thing you drink every day, all day, but no, porridge itself does not give you a pot belly. I don't know who told people that. Another myth that I find, well, this one hits close to home for vegetarians and vegans about B12 sources. Now, there are very many health foods that have been touted as being rich in B12, and they're plant-based, but they're not. B12 is a bacteria, and this bacteria is the only sources, let me put it this, the only sources of food that have B12, vitamin B12, are animal sources. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, please use B12 supplements. Get B12 supplements, because I have actually met people who say that chickpeas have B12. No, they do not. I have met people who said, I know right now it's sea moss. There isn't a plant-based source of B12. And I know I've also had people say that, but the inner lining of your mouth should have B12, and no.
You poop it out.
Yes, it does not get into your bloodstream. So let's get that straight. For our vegetarians and vegans, let's make sure that we're getting our B12, and don't wait until you have headaches and your mind is foggy and cloudy and you don't know what's going on, and you're going to hospital to find out that your B12 is low, especially because we also hear that by the time you get into a place where your B12, and this is the assumption, many people have read online that your B12 is depleted over 5 years. So we think it will take me 5 years to be completely out of B12 and before I need to start taking supplements. that's not true. So let's check on that. And it's also just good in good health practice, as far as we can afford to go for our annual checkups. You know, the way like you'd go, don't wait until the tooth is really bad so that you're getting a root canal. Go for your annual checkups, make sure that your blood is fine, make sure that your micronutrients are okay. Just go for those checkups every year to make sure that everything is working okay, right?
Let me just comment on the B12.
Mm-hmm.
B12 is made in the gut of the animals we omnivores eat. Mm-hmm. And if you're not able to get it, you get it through supplementation. And nature is, if you look at rabbits are vegans, right? But what happens is, because even we create B12 in our poop, but we poop it out, we don't eat our own poop. But what happens to rabbits which are vegans? They eat, there's something they concentrate in their poop, and they eat it again so that they can get their B12 back. So for vegans, and vegetarians, vegans especially, vegetarian, if you're flexi, you're eating eggs and milk, you'll get your B12. But for my Adventist families, please take your B12 supplementation seriously. And because it's a water-soluble vitamin, you lose it faster than your other fat-soluble vitamins, the A, D, E, and K. So as Sharon said, please go for a checkup and please take your B12. Hussein, we are talking about food myths. We've covered food rots in the stomach. Sharon has talked about carb phobia, and we were addressing our fellow Adventists who are not taking B12 because they think they're getting it from food. Okay, Sharon, go ahead. And Hussein, yeah, Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, so so protein, and especially for people who say they want to exercise and bulk up, there's a general assumption that the only food you need to focus on is protein, that you should now increase how much meat you take and just forget about everything else. You know, maybe have a banana before a workout or a cup of coffee to boost your energy. You still do need to get all your other nutrients, your macros and your micronutrients. Yes, you will need to up your protein because you're building muscle, but that does not mean that you will do away with the others. So for anyone who is going hard at the gym, and especially for those who have asked questions around bodybuilding and weightlifting, yes, you need to up your protein, but that does not mean completely doing away with everything else. You still need your vegetables, you still need your carbs, you still need your fruit, you still need your water, you still need all of them put together, your minerals and vitamins, you need them all.
And we are seeing a resurgence of scurvy, vitamin C deficiency amongst the people on the carnivore diet, because they've been told they don't need a leaf because leaves and plants are toxic. So we are seeing a resurgence of vitamin C deficiency. The only sources of vitamin C, the same way we say the only sources of B12 are supplementation and animals, the only sources of vitamin C are plants. And everything from pilipili to machungwa to oranges, gosh, my Swahili, yes, are all sources of vitamin C. Hussein, do you want to go?
Just something I would add as far as those who train hard, just something about that as far as that goes. The question becomes, what exactly are you training for? In terms of the different things you would be training for. Are you strength training? Are you bodybuilding? Are you just training to keep in shape? 3 things you've got to consider. If you're training just to keep in shape, you don't necessarily have to increase everything in your diet. If you're training for mass and you just want to look big and bulky, you will probably have to increase your carbohydrate intake, because that's basically your fuel when you're training. If you're building to achieve muscle, like most people want to get that physique, you will have to increase both your protein and your energy intake. The only other thing is, we always assume we need to, if we want to lose weight and we are training, we assume that if we eat less we're going to, when you're training, you assume that you will not burn some of that energy. The interesting thing is any form of exercise, for about half an hour to 45 minutes later, your body is still in what you call a thermogenic state. So it's still burning energy. So which means every time you train, you're helping your body burn any amount of extra energy that you take, which is the reason why you'll be encouraged to do any form of physical activity, just because you'll still continue burning energy, even if you sit down after that for about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. And can we talk about intermittent fasting while we are here, because it's a thing in Kenya? Who's, because you are away praying? Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, intermittent fasting depends. Well, the problem is what exactly is interpreted by intermittent fasting. That's my problem. A lot of people assume that intermittent fasting is staying away from all food for the whole day. So in the sense that you wake up in the morning, you have a very light breakfast, and you don't eat the whole day, and you again end up having a heavy dinner in the evening because you're hungry for the whole day. So what you've done is twisted your whole body cycle over. The morning is when you need the most amount of energy to last you through the day, but now you end up taking it in the evening because you're hungry, because you've fasted the whole day. The people will tell you that now you can fast 10 days every so maybe 6 months. Some will tell you 20 days. The problem is there's no hard and fast rule behind intermittent fasting. Whether the benefits outweigh the risks is something that's not been studied exhaustively. So the other form of fasting is what most Muslims would do, where for 30 days you're fasting. That is something entirely different. So that's not really considered intermittent fasting. That's because it's set to a certain type of rules and what you do and what you eat. So that's different. So my problem with intermittent fasting is it has no set guidelines. Everybody interprets it in their own way. Everybody eats what they want during those intermittent fasting periods. Some will tell you that detoxifying, so that simply stay on a fruit and vegetable diet throughout that period. The body was never designed to stay away from food for prolonged periods of time. It requires a certain amount of nutrients every single day that you actually take it, which comes down to now, does intermittent fasting have any benefit? From some of the work done in some of the studies looking at people who've actually used it to lose weight, they have had a rebound weight gain approximately 3 to 6 months later and have actually exceeded the amount of weight they've lost. So scientifically speaking, I would advise against it. It probably does not have much of a role.
So there are two types. There are actually rules, but Kenyans don't follow them because Kenyans don't read. It's called time restricted feeding. So there are different rules. It depends on the. You can either do 18 hours of fast and eat for 6 hours continuously. You can do eat for 5 days, leave out 2 days. Ramadan is actually considered a type of intermittent fasting, because when you're thinking about the word intermittent, it's in bits and pieces. So it's stop to eat and then eat. So the problem with many people, like what you said, is that they eat a slight breakfast, then they starve, then they return all the calories plus more during the evening when they don't really need it because they're going to sleep. So the benefits that have been touted, people keep saying autophagy, which is cell eating. The studies have been done in rodents and they're not animal-based studies. In fact, the only animal-based, human-based study that was done by Dr. Ethan Wise, he was strict in intermittent faster. He stopped doing it because the studies just showed there was no benefit. Because I know people are doing it for longevity. People are doing it for prevention of cancer. We do not have the data at the moment. And as scientists, we'll just say we will wait for the data. At the moment, if it's helps you stay away from many calories if you can control how you're eating, and it will not lead you to orthorexia or bulimia or anorexia. It's not a bad tool to have in your kit, but you have to do it right, because you might overfast. And when you overfast, what happens? The body will tap into your stores, which is fat and your precious muscle. And remember, your heart is a muscle. I keep telling people this, that you might fast away and eat away your heart muscle. Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, so I have read papers that have said that there are benefits to intermittent fasting, especially when you are jump starting, which is something that many of us are preparing to do in January. Probably didn't get to my health and wellness goals, especially during the festive season. So either cut off food completely for a day or juice, and then now get back to eating normally, as opposed to, you know, a few days of overindulgence, especially in December. What I typically recommend is for meal spacing. When we eat, the practice of eating mindfully is eating until you're full, until you're satisfied, and then giving your stomach, basically your gut, just time to break down that food and for complete stomach emptying before your next meal. Because for a while there had been the idea of eating several small meals a day had been touted, and that's not necessarily healthy. It's the same way, like there's this wave, just something I have encountered of people who just think like breakfast is a complete waste of time. I'll just have a cup of coffee and then go my way. And I tell them, you will eventually feel hungry enough to make up for those calories in the course of the day, and very likely eat more than you would have if you had just eaten something in the morning and then waited to eat about 4 or 5 hours later, and just drinking water in between. So as you've both said, the fact that there isn't any regulation in intermittent fasting is what makes it problematic. And secondly, that people have sort of left it to, have decided to interpret it the way they will. If I want to fast for 16 hours or a whole day and then eat the next day, that I have found in my line of work to cause people to sort of nurse these feelings of deprivation. And what usually happens is, when you're feeling deprived, is the next time you have a chance to eat, you will eat and you will go crazy. And secondly, if you're eating your meals and you're spacing them, that's fine. But also, what is the quality of the food you're eating? And for many of us, when we say that, yes, I was able to lose weight and I have seen people who've successfully lost weight on this intermittent fasting plan, but then are you able to continue to maintain the weight loss over a long period of time? So it's a struggle to lose 10 kilos, yes, but are you able to keep off those 10 kilos? Because think not just of now, but in the future, will you continue to eat this way? Will you continue to go whole days without eating, or 8 hours without eating, or eating, having just a mug of coffee in the morning and then a heavy meal in the evening? Just thinking about it long term would be more useful, and spacing meals would definitely be more sustainable than, say, fasting whole days in a month.
Hussein, do you have a myth you'd like to share and just discuss it? As I put up the slide on what we see. Oh. Yeah, Hussein, go ahead if you have a myth.
Okay, I guess one of the myths that has long been held is that when we exercise, when we cut out say a lot of energy-rich foods from our diet, we're automatically going to lose weight. The question is, you will probably lose weight, but the thing with the body is it prioritizes which sources of energy you're going to use its storage sources first. A lot of people think that if I continue exercising, I'm going to burn off fat first. That's wrong. Your body looks for the most expensive source for the body to eventually use is fat. You'll burn your carbohydrate stores first, then you will actually burn off muscle first, which means the amino acids in you'll break the liver, will break that to release energy for you. I don't know, Posa, if you remember those biochemistry lectures. It was carbohydrates first, then proteins, and then actually fats last. So your fat stores are going to burn out last. The trick was that if you increase the amount of muscle mass that you have throughout your body, muscle uses a lot more energy throughout the day, which means when your intake is actually is regulated by the fact that your muscles require more. So that's one of the myths that I want to dispel, that if you exercise, the first thing you're going to burn off is your fat stores. It's actually not, especially if you don't keep your energy intake adequate, you will burn out muscle to generate energy. That's one of the myths that has to be dispelled.
Okay. And for in terms of weight loss, I don't think people think about what's the composition of their body. And as you can see, the guy in a vest, it's made up of your bones, your body fat, your muscle, and your internal organs. So when you're losing weight, something over here must give. You don't want the bone to give, and you don't want muscle to give. What you want to give is body fat and the fat that surrounds these internal organs. So some of us might be losing weight and looking good on outside, what we call tough eyes, as in thin on the outside, fat on the inside, and you're just still storing fat outside around your organs, which is more dangerous fat. So you have to be very deliberate in how you diet and how you how you exercise to be able to maintain the right things. Like your bone should not be lost, and your muscles should also be maintained. But try and lose the fat. The thing that we want to lose is the fat, the one that's under your skin and the one that's under your organs. And you won't lose all the fat, because fat is an essential part of your body, whether you believe it or not. Okay, I think we've gone long enough, but someone has asked, so Sharon, what should we do during this holiday season? How should we, because there's food, there's chapati, and there's a lot of soda and alcohol and nyama choma. How would you advise us to eat around this holiday season? And like, my gosh, today is 12th December. Tomorrow is also a public holiday. Hey, Kenyans, you'll survive December. You will. Okay, but just Sharon, guide us as we survive this many Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay. So everything needs a plan, and I think sometimes we fail because we go into the holidays blindly, the way we did last year and the year before. And the way as intentional as we are about meeting, whether it's our work targets or our financial targets, we should also be very intentional about meeting our health and wellness targets. So whether it is eating without guilt or not overindulging, etc. Sometimes even playing back the conversation you'd like to have with your family members about why you're choosing to eat a certain way, or why you're not drinking as much as you have before. So I tell people everything in moderation when it comes to food. It's, yes, please have your chapati and have your nyama choma, and if that makes you happy, and especially when you're eating in company or when you're seeing your family, etc. Because for us as Africans, like, eating is a social affair. So do not deprive yourself, but also don't go crazy. Do everything with balance. When you find that there are vegetables on the table somewhere, please reach out for them. They will not harm you. And also, just on top of that, just making sure that we are doing all the other things that we need to do. It's not just about what you're eating. Diet and exercise go hand in hand. And that has been the truth for a very long time. You can enjoy a good meal, and especially if you feel like you've eaten more than you'd like to, just go out for a walk, stretch your legs and walk off some of that food. There are times when we eat when we are really thirsty, because the signal for hunger and thirst is the same. So making sure that you also have, say, your water bottle next to you, the way it used to sit at your desk at the office. Have one that moves around with you, so that you're also sipping on your water in the course of the day, and not just constantly thinking of what else you can put in your mouth. And I mean, these are just some of the few tips I would throw at you. It's everything in moderation. If you're meeting up with your friends for an evening meal, make sure you didn't skip lunch, so that you're also not going, taking your hunger and your entire appetite with you to your meetup with your friends. Some of the other tricks I've even learned from some of my clients is share your calories. If you're meeting a friend for a cup of coffee and cake, you could, decide to split the cake and share it. So these are just go out there with a plan. The same way you should not go shopping when you're hungry, or you should, allow yourself to indulge so that you're not feeling deprived. Just have a general plan of what it is that you'd like to do. And as far as possible, also just have someone keeping you accountable as well. If you're there with your sister and you've told them that you'd like to eat healthier, or you'd like to make better decisions around your eating or the food choices that you make, then do let someone know in the crowd, so that there'll be a sort of sense of accountability as well.
Hussein, do you have any more? I mean, Sharon has just taken that thing to town, sindio? Hata tukiongezea ni kuharibu. So do you have any additional things? As someone has just sent a question on the Facebook link, should they eat a heavy breakfast and then just take a chia seed drink the rest of the day? And that, as Hussein thinks, Sharon, I want us to discuss how to read nutritional labels and why that chia seed drink is not the plan, and hence the slide up here. Who's go ahead?
What I'd suggest is, okay, most of these things, the smoothies, the chia seeds, all those things that the fads that have been brought about, that I take a heavy breakfast, then I don't take anything else except a drink and maybe fruit over lunchtime, and then I have a very light dinner. Those are things that are, unless you know exactly what you're doing, you'd rather not follow someone's advice and play around with such things. Get a nutritionist on board. So Sharon's important there because she can guide you on what you need for your body type, if you're intending to lose weight or intending to gain weight, both of those. So my suggestion would be that have a good breakfast, well balanced out. Eat lunch. Do not skip your lunch, or at least something during that meal, and keep your dinner as the lightest meal of your day. That way, you're highly unlikely to store anything overnight and gain your weight. That would be my advice. And in between, exercise. It's the key to losing everything that you eat.
And also, exercise is good for your just general heart health, as in to keep your heart pumping very well. It's very good. Okay, so Sharon, just go ahead and discuss the. We've agreed the person who's taking chia seed drink is a no-no, right? The whole day. But just go ahead and walk us through understanding food labels.
Okay, so when we're reading our food labels, there are a few things that we need to consider. And for starters, we have to look at the serving size. So for instance, with this particular one, you have something that has four pieces inside, or basically 4 servings. So I like using the example of Weetabix. So if you bought a pack and it has like the 4 biscuits inside, then you know that the information being provided here is for each of those serving sizes. So that's the first thing you need to know about the serving sizes. Secondly, the next thing you need to be looking at is the total calories. Now, when they say the amount per serving is 280, for instance, we're just using the one that we have in front of us. If you're going to eat the whole pack of whatever it is that you bought, say it's your Weetabix, if you're going to consume all of them, then you know you're going to multiply that 280 by 4. So again, just think of the total calories that you're consuming. And then now we go down to like the particular nutrients that are represented here. So we're looking at saturated fat, which we didn't really talk about, and trans fats. Like many of us know that trans fats are not healthy, and saturated fat as well. But when we look at the percentages, we're saying if the total fat is, so for instance, here it's 12%. So 9 grams, 12% total fat, like of the whole product that you bought, that is the percentage and what is of the daily values. So when you're going through the nutrients as well, you're looking at what is at the very top is what is has the highest percentage. And then as you go down, so it would be the fat and then going down. Check out nutrition terms as well. So you with fat, basically that covers your saturated fat, your trans fats. If there are any other types of fatty acids represented in there, there's cholesterol as well. Then sodium is, most of us know that, this is for people who have, say, high blood pressure issues, that is something of concern. So if you have been, your sodium has been restricted and you're looking at something that has a high percentage of sodium on it, then that's something that you should be looking at and thinking, okay, then this is probably not something I should be consuming, or something that has a high percentage of saturated fat or trans fat. Then the other nutrients will basically, so let's see.
So let me just correct you on the percentage part. If you go to the bottom of the I know in the States they do that. The percentage is based on your required daily amount, but based on a 2,000 calorie limit. So for when I'm advising people, I tell them to ignore that part because it's not for you. Concentrate on, this is where I still go back to my calories calculation, which the two of you don't like, but just concentrate, hide the purple part. Concentrate on like this particular food, I don't know what it was, has 9 grams of fat and it divides it for you. And then sodium, then the carbohydrates is 34. Some people subtract dietary fiber to give you what is called net carb. So because the 4 grams won't be absorbed, it will just help you poop. So for that particular package, like if you're on a keto diet, whatever one serving of this, you're done for the day because you'll get 30 grams. Then the rest, the protein and all that, because it's the percentages are, because if you add them up, it's over 100. It's based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So it tells you how much of the recommendations are there, but just stick on the yellow part and the serving, note the blue and the yellow. Does that make sense? Yes,
it does. And so some of the over and above the calories, the other things that we're looking out for is the fat, the saturated fat, trans fats, cholesterol, and sodium.
Okay. So for my other nutritional, the one I wanted us to cover, besides fermented food, as we wind up, it's the one for potassium, because there are so many obese, hypertensive patients who are just eating a lot of bananas because they've been told that's their only source of potassium. And if we look at okay, the States bananas are a bit different. It could be different from, those nice sweet bananas my mother has. It could be different, but just look at this banana. It has approximately 1 gram of protein, 0.3 grams of fat, and 22.84 grams of carbohydrates. And then it gives you 358 milligrams of potassium. So imagine you're adding, and you see no Kenyan eats one banana, they're chasing 358 milligrams by adding on 22 grams. And this happens to most diabetics, most hypertensive. So they're just eating 4 bananas to chase that potassium, and in the end up eating 100 grams of carbohydrate. Yet there are other things, like I said, shop wide. There are other things on especially on the left side of the screen, which are have lower calories in them, but are full of potassium, like mushrooms, things at least we eat in Kenya. Okay, leave the French fries alone. All sorts of beans, the beetroots, the bok choy, which is like, and Swiss chard is spinach back home, and tomatoes, and malenge. So sometimes we just need to, I don't know who put that myth out there or whatever knowledge out there about potassium and bananas, but we need to switch people to at least healthier versions of the same. So I just want us to wind up because we've gone forever. Do we have one last take-home message for each of you? And we will go according to left, kushoto kulia, kushoto, oh, sorry. Who's go ahead? That song came to my head.
No, all I'm going to say is that as far as nutrition goes, one recipe does not fit all. That's my take-home message. Get to know your body type, get to know your body composition, get to know your targets. Do you want to gain weight? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to gain muscle? Do you want to lose muscle mass? Figure out what you want. If I take it from the perspective of children, all I'll say is children are growing at any given point in their life. From birth to 1.5 years is their largest growth spurt, followed by adolescence. Do not start controlling their foods. Give them extra because they need to grow. What you keep them away from is the highly processed foods, but give them any natural food. It has never done any harm. The other thing I'd like to say is, I guess Sharon will disagree with me on this, but on the value of smoothies in people's diets, I tend to disagree because it gives them a lot of, I guess I'll look at it from the practical point of view. If God gave you teeth, you're supposed to chew your food. I don't think smoothies is the way to go. That's, I think, my take-home message. Sharon, you might disagree with me.
Sharon, go ahead. Okay. Smoothies have their place, especially for people who can't digest, and people, no, not digest, who can't chew, and people who are on their last day in hospice and they just want smoothies. Give them smoothies.
I think,
Sharon, go ahead. Yeah.
Doc missed the part where I actually said that I had to food and not drink it. But what I advise, I would simply say this: when trying to get to your health and wellness goals, diet and exercise go together. And I would advise everyone to start simply and simply start. Take little steps in the right direction. Start by stocking up on the right foods. You will not eat what you do not have. And then sit down with a nutritionist and come up with a menu that works for you, that's accessible, both financially and physically, things you can get in your local market. And don't believe everything that you see on the internet. So start simply and simply start. Do something about it, even during the festive season. Just be mindful about what you're eating and how much you're eating. Do not deprive yourself, everything in moderation. And yes, let's make being healthy and eating healthy fun. It doesn't have to be a painful process.
And on that note, we are going to end it. Let's enjoy eating and let's be healthy while at it, and exercise. Sarcopenia sucks. So for me, I'm very pro lifting weights. So if you're lifting weights, lift them. If you're walking, walk. If you're biking, bike, but just move your body and eat well. Thank you. And there's a Facebook link. You can share it for the people who don't have bundles and can watch it later. But thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Hus, for this enlightening discussion. And thank you. And thank you, the ones who were in the actual Zoom. Asanteni sana. And if you have any question, wherever you got this link from, just ask them, it shall reach me. And I will see what to do. Kwaherini. I'm going to end it unceremoniously, so I'm ending. Bye-bye.
Bye.